This is the VIP Podcast, Virginia in Politics. Let's listen to host Chris Saxman explore the personalities and policies that connect the Commonwealth. The VIP Podcast is brought to you by the VCTA, Broadband Association of Virginia, and Virginia Free. The views and opinions expressed here do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the VCTA and Virginia Free or our sponsors.
It's great to be back here again on the VIP Podcast with our brand new VIP, Mayor Levar Stoney of the City of Richmond. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Well, the VIP Podcast is brought to you by VCTA, the Broadband Association of Virginia, and Virginia Free, of which I am its executive director. And Levar, you and I have known each other for a number of years. We're veterans in this game.
I remember you were a delegate. Remember the General Assembly?
I know, and you were just a young, spunky kid up at James Madison.
Right. That's right.
So we've always gotten along. We've always sort of been in the back row, chumming it up.
That's right.
Having a good time, and now you're the mayor of Richmond in your second term.
Second term.
You don't have midterms.
No midterms here.
But let's get to know Mayor Levar Stoney on a more personal level, since you've been known so much in the political sense. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our viewers have known you in the Secretary of Commonwealth and the McAuliffe administration, and now you're mayor in your second term. Still a young lad, you know.
I guess don't feel that way.
What are you, 41?
41.
That's great. What are your favorite movies? Let's just jump right into my rapid fire round of get to know the guy.
Favorite movies. If you're a friend of me, you probably know that I'm a big fan of the 5 Heartbeats. You ever heard of 5 Heartbeats? It's about a soul group from the 1960s, goes through their trials and tribulations on how to break out and whatnot. One of my favorites. Kind of like, the
5
Temptations. Yeah, you got to check it out.
Okay. Motown based?
Motown, sort of like a Motown flair to it and whatnot.
Okay. Because I'm originally from Detroit.
Okay.
As a youth.
So 5 Heartbeats.
Okay.
I'm also a big fan of, what's the movie? Now I'm like drawing a blank right here.
Right. No one preps you for these.
Yeah, no, I'm drawing a blank right here. 5 Heartbeats is my favorite.
Okay.
And what's it? Harrison Ford.
Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yes, when he left the jail, The Fugitive.
Oh, The Fugitive.
Believe it or not, The Fugitive is one of my favorites as well.
That's
and
a great
also
movie.
Any Given Sunday as well.
Okay. Football story.
So every time
Al Pacino,
before Election Day, ever since I
Diaz.
was in college, I've always watched Any Given Sunday the Monday night before the Tuesday.
Why do you watch that? What's the lesson there that you say I have to watch?
Well, that Al Pacino speech really gets me going, right? That you have to crawl and fight for every inch, which is a little bit, Lombardi in there and whatnot. That really gets me going. But also it shows you how a guy, Jamie Foxx's character, right, starts up all high, has to get humbled, but then rises to the occasion when he's called off the bench. And guess what? Being in public office, you know about this.
Yeah.
If you don't humble yourself, the job will humble you. That's all the advice I give to people who get elected to office. My friend is the mayor, just got elected mayor of Farmville, Brian Vincent, and I said to him, you know what? If you don't do this job in a humble fashion, the job will certainly humble you.
Yeah, I love the humility vein that you just tapped, because I have an expression in politics. It's very similar. Mm-hmm. It's be humble or be humbled.
There you go. Same thing.
It'll drop you.
There's
because you're in a human service business. There are so many facets to this, and I hate to say game, business, reality, industry, whatever it is, whatever we term this profession that we're in, it finds every crack in your psyche.
And and it's different for legislators versus mayors, right? Or municipal executives, chief executives, whatever you want to call it. When you're a mayor, particularly, we have more of a strong mayor form of government here in Richmond. And if you're the mayor of Philadelphia, the mayor of Baltimore, the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, wherever you may be, you have to throw yourself into this work. Mm-hmm. And so Michael Nutter, the former mayor of Philadelphia, said it's almost like jumping off the stage and crowd surfing. You want people to catch you, and you have to ride the crowd.
Right. And they don't have to catch you.
They don't have to catch you. That's right. And so you have to jump off the stage. You have to take that leap and just be amongst the people. And that's a part of the job that I think people sometimes don't see.
That's very true. Favorite TV show?
Favorite TV show? Favorite TV show. I like House of Cards.
Okay.
One of my favorites. Favorite TV show. Martin. Remember Martin? Or Martin Lawrence.
Yeah.
One of my favorite sitcoms of all time.
Funny guy.
Yeah.
Real funny guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
It makes me laugh. I turn on, now it's in syndication now, so I can watch it anytime I want to. So it helps fill the time.
Is that when you go home at night and you're trying to chill out and turn it off, because politics never turns off, as you know.
That's right.
It never turns off.
Yeah.
You're always getting texted or emailed or something.
Yeah.
Do you throw anything on the television just to brain drain?
Oh, you mean CNN?
I didn't say that. That wasn't me. I didn't say that.
My fiance would probably say, we'll watch some shows. We'll get into some shows.
Right.
We recently, watched, the Dahmer on Netflix.
Oh,
We
really?
watched that. That was hard to watch.
Disturbing.
Very disturbing. We watched that. We've watched some shows on HBO Max, like The Mayor of Easttown, something that stood out to me. So we get into.
But you tend towards the competitive political.
We like that
persuasion.
Yeah,
Does she like that
yeah,
too?
She likes some of that as well.
Okay.
She likes some of the true crime stuff as well.
Okay.
Now there's some TV out there that people like watching some of this reality sort of TV. The only reality TV that we normally watch is 60 Days In. Ever heard of it?
No.
It's when regular people go into a jail, a corrections facility for 60 days.
Hey, okay.
you see a lot, and you see folks who they act
do
all.
you see a lot in prison for 60 days?
They act all big and bad, right? Talking all, oh my gosh, we're gonna go in and show these folks what's going on. They're sitting there watching big screen TVs and watching NFL football, and they get in there like, this is not what I thought it was.
No.
Some people don't even make it out of processing.
Because they freak out?
Yes.
Okay.
But also it puts a highlight on the conditions as well that are in a lot of these facilities, right?
It's not good.
They are not Hiltons.
No,
they're not Marriott's.
They're not good.
But I think there have certainly been some human right violations as well.
I just was talking to the House Minority Leader last week, Don Scott, week before, and he had just gotten back from a prison. I forget which one it was. It was not Essex or down that way, Greensville. And he said, this year alone, 8 people have died in the correctional facility he just visited from an overdose of drugs, from heroin overdose, in prison.
Wow.
How in the hell
so,
are these people getting heroin to the point at which they can be addicted, continue their addiction and overdose in prison and die?
So in 60 Days In, it shows how during processing some of the searches are not thorough. The way
really?
They're getting it in, and I'm like, they're obviously not thorough. But the thing is, how you get it in and then how you ingest it wouldn't be me.
No.
Wouldn't be me.
This is sort of a family show. We can leave it right there. Okay, favorite books?
Favorite books?
Or are you reading one now?
You know what? I'm reading Jonathan Martin's book now.
Are you?
Yeah.
J. Mart.
Yeah, J. Mart's book right now on
New York Times
6
best-selling author.
and all that. Yeah. I'm reading that right now.
Straight out of Virginia politics.
Yes.
J. Mart.
Yes. I bought the book.
College.
I'm really interested in reading Ralph Northam's book right now.
Does he have a book out?
Well, Margaret Eads authored a
that
book.
book.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that book. Yes. Yes. I'm interested in reading that, so I've pre-ordered that on Amazon. One of my favorite books, though, is The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck.
Okay.
It's something I read that back in the day. It always stuck with me. It's just a just a book that when you pick up a book and you're like, man, I still remember that book from the time I read it back in seventh grade to the day. It shows you that it sticks with you, that you finally comprehended it, and that's one thing when you're responsible for so many children, 24,000 children in Richmond Public Schools, it's like you learn to read and you read to learn, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm fortunate enough that I remember when I first picked up a book and I remember when I couldn't read, and then my dad did the whole follow the finger across the words.
Okay.
And I was like, he said, see, just string it all together.
Okay.
And it just was like a light bulb. And
I've
been reading ever since. But to me, that's the power of having someone in the home helping you do all this stuff. And guess what? A lot of our kids don't have that.
Don't get that.
And
they need 2. In my estimation, because it's otherwise you're in a zone defense.
Luckily I had my grandmother and my father, so I had that reinforcement of you know what, you can do anything you put your mind to.
Absolutely.
Right? And so that's how I ended up in public service.
Well, let's come to that in a second. But since you also did sports as a
Now, I'm a big sports guy.
Okay,
particularly football.
Football teams.
I know you're a football guy too, right?
I didn't play it.
You didn't play it?
I played rugby.
You just seem to be a little.
I played rugby.
Built.
Yeah, played rugby and catcher in baseball as well. So favorite teams?
Favorite teams. I'm a huge New York Jets fan.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Well, we're tied for.
Well, you were born in Nassau County, New York.
That's exactly right. I was born in Long Island.
Did it come from those days?
That comes from my father was a big
used
Jets
to disappointment
fan.
then.
Yeah, well, you know, a glutton for punishment.
You like Tom Brady then?
Heck no. I like him in Tampa.
Okay.
I don't like him as a
Okay.
New England
Jets
Patriot.
fan.
Yeah. So I grew up a Jets fan. I grew up a Knicks fan.
Okay, I can
grew up
square with
an
you.
Islanders hockey fan.
Oh, God, that's just a bloody
And a Mets fan. So yeah, I've been a glutton.
You're that strain of New York.
Yeah, Long Island,
Long
right?
Island, yeah.
But we moved to Virginia back when I was 7 years old.
Okay, that stuck with you.
And so I never could become a Washington Commanders fan. I just never could do it. My brother didn't do it as well. He became a 49ers fan. So we just chose our own way.
No, that was the other than the Islanders and the Jets. You're doing okay. And, and the Knicks. I used to see the Knicks. all the
And
time.
I'm a big James Madison football fan.
Okay, let's talk about. Did you play for them?
I did not play. Did not play.
You played in
I
high
was
school?
told maybe you should walk on, and I was like,
Because you went Tab High School,
Yep.
Which is located where?
in York County, Yorktown, Virginia.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yorktown. And you played football there, very successful. You chose to go to James Madison. Did you look at any other schools?
Oh, I was looking at a ton of other schools. You know, I was going to be the first person in my family to go to college, and I thought, man, it's so cool that I'm getting all these, these mailers from USC and from St. Louis, University of Washington, St. Louis. All these places were mailing me, and I realized it was all part of the show. They want everybody to. And then I remember my dad said, "Well, you're going to a state school," and I said, "Okay, so bye bye USC and bye bye all these other out of state schools. Put them in a box, threw them in the garbage." Focused on the in-state schools.
Where'd you want to go? What was your dream school? Before,
You know what?
Before reality hits in, like, look, you're going to state school. I get the conversation. We've had it with our kids, too, over the years.
Yeah.
Can't do everything.
No lie. Growing up, I thought I was going to go to William & Mary.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought, well, it's close to home.
Sure.
Right? It was one of the first campuses I stepped foot on. Growing up in York County, you got Williamsburg and William & Mary, and then you got Hampton and Hampton University. Those were the two campuses that I first stepped foot on.
Okay. In Hampton, okay.
And so I went to William & Mary for a couple of these conferences, first on leadership and diversity. And that's actually where I met Jeff Bourne for the first time.
Really?
He was an older fella.
Delegate Jeff Bourne.
Delegate Jeff Bourne.
Warner administration.
And I was like, I put it all together. I pieced it all together. I was like, you were? He's like, yeah, I probably was there. I was like, because you look familiar. And I was a little, maybe 9th grader, 10th grader.
Okay.
And he was there in college at the time. Didn't get into Will Mary. I applied to CNU and I applied to Longwood, Randolph-Macon. I was recruited to play football at Randolph-Macon.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And
good D3 school.
That's right.
In the playoffs this week.
And also VMI. I was recruited to play football at VMI as well. And I just decided, you know what? I want to go to a school that just, I feel some sort of attachment to.
Yeah.
And when I ran track, I had visited Bridgeford Stadium in Harrisonburg twice because I was in the state championship twice for track. And that's the only time I ever stepped foot on JMU's campus.
Okay.
A friend of mine comes to me. He says, I'm not applying to JMU, and I have the application. And I was like, well, I need that application because I didn't have a computer in the home. And so I wrote all my applications out. I filled it all out by hand. He brings it to school on the day of the deadline that it needed to be postmarked. I fill it out in class. I take my personal statement, match them together. I send it off, and then some months later, I get that big package in the mail.
Yeah,
I remember going, I lived in an apartment complex, opening up the mailbox. I saw that big package, and I was always told, when the package is meaty, that you're probably going to be getting in. And I got that ran home. I remember I sprinted home. I told my grandma, I was like, I got into college, Grandma. I got into college.
Awesome.
And, my grandmother, she didn't graduate from high school. And so she didn't really, she knew I was going away, but she didn't really grasp it like, I'm going to college, Grandma. And I read that letter and it said that you have been admitted to James Madison University contingent upon your completion of our summer remedial program.
Okay.
And after I graduated, let's say on a Friday, I was in James Madison on a Saturday.
For the summer program?
For the summer program for 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah, I aced that program, and I was like, I'm here for the long term.
And you obviously successfully graduated, but you were involved in politics at a very young age.
Yeah.
Were you involved in politics in high school?
I was always involved in student government, student council, always.
Why is that?
Elementary schools.
What is it about? Let's get to the why question. What the narrative here is, obviously very political. You've been very political from a young age. It's not a knock, it's an observation.
Yeah.
I was involved in high school government, college government, student government, all that kind of stuff too. And I always try to understand and get the audience to understand what drives you. What makes you do that in the first place, and why do you stick with it? I mean, what is it? What do you see as the reason to do it in the first place and remain with it?
Well, it's twofold. It's first, it begins with family and what I learned in school as well, and it's just a little bit of curiosity on the school side. At home, we were a family that my grandmother didn't vote, my father didn't vote. They were sort of passive. They had a lot of commentary about what was going on, but they really didn't vote. But when you brought up certain subjects like John F. Kennedy or Dr. King, they had a lot to say. Okay. And my grandmother was a big fan of John F. Kennedy. She was a fan of Roosevelt because, she was born in 1923 when the Depression hit. She thought one way about Hoover and another way about how FDR saved the country. And so that started to be ingrained in me, and then Kennedy's work and, the sort of the aura and the sort of, around the legend around John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy. And so that got me curious. And then I would go to school, and I remember being in elementary school, they did not allow the little elementary school kids, like the first and second graders, to check out the books of the presidents. And I thought there was something wrong with that. I was like, I don't want to check out the Berenstain Bears or, Dr. Seuss. I want to check out, the books. I want to check out these presidential biographies.
Due to the conversation that was going on in your household.
That's right.
It wasn't, even they weren't.
So I don't care who they were, whether it was Martin Van Buren or, James K. Polk.
Because your family was talking about it.
I wanted to check out and read every one of those books. And I probably had some difficulty reading the books, and I just didn't want to stick to the pictures. There weren't a lot of pictures in these biographies, but I wanted to challenge myself to read some of these books. And so the teacher and the librarian allowed me to do so.
Oh, nice.
And for me, it was like, these are mortal men who just decided to, and I know there's a lot to their stories, but mortal men who just gave themselves to public service.
Sure.
And I thought, wow, they are contributing to something that's larger than themselves. And I think I've always been interested in doing something that's just larger than myself.
But was it also that your grandmother and your father were talking about this, and because that elevated the conversation, and they admired them, you read about them and sort of said,
I can do that too.
And to be admired by my family, can I emulate what's going on here? And is that sort of like a drive in that direction?
It was.
And I'll just give you from my own personal story. I grew up. My childhood hero was Roberto Clemente.
Okay.
I saw him play once live as an all-star game in the early '70s. But my grandmother had a season ticket to the Pirates by herself. And she'd take the trolley over to Oakland and Forbes Field. Uh-huh. And I was very young, 5, 6 years of age when when he passed, unfortunately. But I idolized the guy I never saw because my grandmother idolized him and said he's not only a great ball player, he's a better man. And that sticks with you when you adore your grandmother and she says this is the ideal, and you go, okay, where do I go for that? That always drove me to pursue that, and why Clemente the Great one is idolized in our house.
And my grandmother, I think a similar story where she was like, this was a good man. He was good to people.
Right.
And the unfortunate part is the tragedy that comes with whether it was Bobby Kennedy or John F. Kennedy, is being assassinated while in service to others. And so when I figured out what I wanted to do with my life, I remember I wanted to be a weatherman initially. And I told my grandmother, I was like, I like just, forecasting the weather,
LeVar Storm.
Yeah, right. I was just like, I would turn the TV on mute and go to the Weather Channel or go and try and, forecast the weather. And I said, Grandma, I've changed my mind. I think I want to be a politician when I grow up. And she said, boy, well, you probably chose the right one because they both lie. And I was like, Grandma, come on, give me some, not me. But she never got to see me serve as Secretary of the Commonwealth, see me serve as mayor. But she cautioned me at a very young age that she's like, because when we talked about Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy and John F. Kennedy, she was like, no, you can't do that. They'll kill you. Anyone trying to do good, they will assassinate. They will take off the, they will snuff out. Sure. And that kind of sort of like scared me. I was like, why would she say that?
Well, that's her.
But then that's her. That's right. Anyone who's trying to do good for, the people, get or in danger.
Well, have you? It's not been a non-controversial time in America, and certainly you've had your turn in some of the the recent unpleasantries, going back through the 2020 summer. Have you had any experience in recognizing my grandma was right? They're trying to kill me. any serious security breaches or problems where you were like scared?
Yeah, there have been moments where there were probably people around me or my family that were more scared for me and my safety, more concerned about my safety.
Because like grandma was right. This is like a big deal.
Standing on the front of City Hall amongst thousands of people, and when that was a scary moment. I was literally not having eaten, not having slept. I didn't sleep. I had to drink a lot of water. People were like, why were you? I was shaking because I was dehydrated. I was shaking because it was a little fear there.
Adrenaline was flowing.
That's right, and the adrenaline was flowing as well. And that was a scary moment.
What'd you learn from all that?
Resilience, right? Resilience, and you know what? You're not going to please 100% of people. That's just the bottom line. And also, in that moment in time, right then and there, I realized I could have given the crowd the red meat, right? Give them what they want to hear. That's very alluring. Like the attraction of giving them the red meat of like, we're gonna fire everyone now because of that.
Right.
I could have done that, but I knew that wasn't the right thing to do. I had a responsibility to let the investigations play itself out as well, but also I wanted to listen and hear what they wanted to see. I did march that afternoon and whatnot, and so for me it was to not cave in, do your job, right, and not. I see now when I look at some of these other politicians out there who are at these rallies and they give folks the red meat. It's so attractive.
Oh, it's that part up
right
in there.
This is a magnetism. It's like if I give them what they want, the crowd will go roar, and I can see how that whole mob mentality can start to take place. And I did not give the crowd what they wanted that day, and I got booed and I got cursed. I got things thrown at me, and you know what? I still think that is one of the, it's a little traumatizing, I'll admit that, right? But it just shows that you can bounce back from something like that.
Well, it's also, you learn sort of the pace and tempo of a lot of events, and like, this is going to blow over. I'm going to get through this. And
there were some sleepless nights there, Chris, though. But
I would imagine there were.
There were some sleepless nights.
There had to have been. It wasn't pleasant for most people in the city. It must have been a very difficult time. Yep. But I've been, as you know, in front of those crowds of 10,000, 20,000, giving the speech, getting them in cadence, getting that rhythm going.
That's right.
And blowing the roof off, right? And you get off stage and people are like, oh my God, that was amazing. And like, I'll never forget this guy who was Mid-Atlantic regional manager for McCain back in 2008. He's like, that was amazing. Is it better than sex? I was like, hell yes. And he goes, why? He wasn't expecting me to say that. I was like, yeah, it was. He's like, why? I'm like, it'll last longer.
Well, it's the adrenaline part of it, right? And when I went out there, I'll admit, we looked at the phone, at the video on the phone. I was like, oh, there's only about like 20 people out there. And then by the time I walked out there were thousands.
Oh, it blows up, especially in today's viral reality world. I mean, and you'd think it's far more expansive than it is, and it's really not. It's so ephemeral. It's centimeter deep and thousands of miles wide, and it blows away for the most part. Not that did.
Well,
that was a difficult.
That was a difficult month. That was a
very difficult time. But most things in politics, the ups and downs, just get through this.
And you know what? I think social media sort of leads you there, right? That everything has to be this instant gratification. I got to respond right now. That's one thing I learned from that whole time period is that you don't be driven by social media. Just do what's right. Just do your job, right? Hear both sides and make a decision, right?
I think Tim Kaine learned that from the Virginia Tech experience and what's recently happened at the University of Virginia this week. He was out there early saying, look, just get the facts, do a review, don't rush to judgment. And I think that's a wise counsel for most things in politics. People get the facts.
That's right.
And as Bill Leidy said, the first moments of a crisis, no one gets it right.
That's right.
And
social media it clouds one of the best. One of the best pieces of advice came from folks in the Northern camp during that time. And they said, Mayor, if you are on social media, get off of social media.
It's not going to help you.
And I've been divorced from social media ever since. I have my own presence on there that are run by, that are managed, but I don't partake in it.
Yeah, well, they learned.
That's right.
A difficult lesson.
That's right.
The veterans understand these things.
That's right.
You don't need to continue the conversation. It only feeds the fire.
There we go.
It only feeds the fire. Let's talk about the city of Richmond now. We've been talking about education.
Yep.
How are the city schools of Richmond doing?
Well, you know what? I thought we were doing quite well before the pandemic. And then, although kids were learning during the pandemic when schools were shut down, we have taken, obviously, some steps back. Teachers were asked to do a whole lot more than they were normally requested to do. And here's the thing, teachers are asked to do a ton. And they did a ton during the pandemic, teaching from their homes and trying to get kids engaged across the screen. A very, very difficult thing to do. And so when you think about that, and then the fact that a lot of the safety net apparatus was also sort of on pause as well, or shut down, a lot of our kids, many of them who are living all below the poverty line or a little bit above the poverty line, they have certainly struggled. But I know that the kids in Richmond Public Schools are very resilient. And the teachers who care for them every day love them. And so we're going to do everything we can to get back to where we were pre-pandemic. Now, will it be overnight? It will not be overnight. You're seeing these numbers, not just here in Virginia, but all across the country. And so, yes, we want to keep our standards high, but it's going to take some time to get them back to where they were. And we're going to see there are going to be some societal ramifications because of the pandemic, I think. And the education learning loss is just one of them.
Well, does that mean following what happened to you and saying, look, these kids need to be remediated and have them go to essentially year-round summer schooling to get them back to grade level or get them reading and following the finger? We've got to get these kids back in the books.
I'm an all of the above, throw the kitchen sink at the problem sort of person. And I believe a part of the solution here is enhanced school days or enhanced academic calendars. And that means year-round school. Our kids need it. And there are some parents who are calling for it as well. Now, if you have access to resources where your kid can get some enrichment outside the classroom on, post their academic calendar year, you're going to be okay. Right. But think about the kids who are living in some of the public housing communities in Richmond. That learning loss really is exacerbated during the summertime.
Absolutely.
And so
it's bad enough anyway.
Yeah, it's bad enough already. And so I'm all about year-round school. I'm all about enhancing the school day. I'm very proud of the work that we've already done. After-school programming was a major thing for me in my first term, allowing for access for all elementary schoolers and middle schoolers. We've actually invested more in that by using some of our parks and recreation, but also a number of our nonprofit partners as well, like Next Up, a local nonprofit in town that's focused on after-school programming. They have been essentially a godsend for us in helping our kids get back to that standard that they were prior to the pandemic.
When you mentioned the Margaret Eads book and Northam administration and some of the lessons they shared with you, what would you have told if you could go back in time and say you didn't do this well relative to schools? What should they have done?
Didn't do well when it comes to schools. I would want to see more innovation.
Because the studies are out.
More innovation.
The kids were just, it didn't go well for kids.
More innovation around, longer school days or
what did they not do well that they should have done?
Well, here's the thing.
It's okay to go back and criticize. It's how we get better as a society.
Well, here's the thing. The North administration or all the administrations of the 50 states and all the cities or whatnot, they had to respond to a pandemic, a virus that was showing, right? When I look back at that...
Everyone's going to have the empathy for that kind of reality.
Right. When I look back at that, the fact that schools were closed, I think that, it's okay to say, you know what? We may have made a mistake. in closing schools. That may have been the case. But at the time, using the information that we have today, right, we had to do what we,
there's always the action after action reviews.
Now, for me, though, looking back at it, we could have been a little bit bolder in our approach when it comes to some of the lockdowns and whatnot and the restrictions, and said, instead of closing schools, maybe we should have the bars closed a little bit longer, the restaurants closed a little bit longer. So, but you see, when you're in these, me and the governor, we were in these positions where we had to make a choice. Right? We didn't know what the virus was going to do to a child. We didn't know what the virus was going to do to families and whatnot, particularly families who...
That aside, I mean, we understand that. What could have been done to mitigate the academic losses suffered by the children? Is it the only way to do this was to shut down the schools and then say, well, because, they seem to graduate a lot of kids on time, which I found a little bit interesting. That would have happened in a time of pandemic when the schools were closed. Seems to me they were passed on through social promotion. But we're in a season now, we kind of go, okay, what works in education? Because that didn't. So if it happens again, and it very well could, or we have to have, the flu is coming up, you never know if to shut down for weeks at a time, weather, whatever. What are key ingredients that you have to go, when this happens, folks, this is how we get kids educated?
Well, now, Chris, we know that we can slap a mask on someone and we actually can go to school.
Okay.
Right? That's a whole lot better than...
So we're not going to shut down the schools.
That's better than learning across a screen, right?
Without question.
That should be the last option, is learn.
Okay.
But we had to learn that, right?
Of course.
Right? We had to learn that. We didn't know whether or not we could slap a mask on a child and they can go in and actually participate in the learning process. Now we do. And so in the future, we know that kids being in school has to be the number one priority. And if that means that we as adults have to sacrifice a little, then we should make the sacrifice. What I mean by that is that if that means that we can't go to the bars, we can't go to the restaurants, then that's a sacrifice that I think we have to make.
And then, so in year-round schooling to catch up until we get to that point?
I'm a big proponent. I'm very upset with my friends on school board who have chosen not to go the pathway.
Why aren't they doing this? I mean, it sounds like, we missed the time in class. The time you make up in class is really, really important.
Very, very
Not
important.
just academically, but socially as well. And getting these kids out doing recess and extracurriculars and really developing them as the whole being.
I know some will say the cost is the issue, but I would be ready to fund something like that. I would be ready to hand over the dollars to Richmond Public Schools to enhance their calendar. I'm all about that, and I think Jason Cameron has offered that a few times. All you need is 5 votes. We have 9 members of the school board. We can't get to 5. We can get to 4. We can't get to 5.
Speaking of school boards and policies, the day you got your letter from the packet from James Madison, big day in the family. Should that be available to students in K through 12 to go to schools of their choice?
Schools of their choice,
and families going to schools of their choice.
Here's the thing. I'm a public school guy. All right. I believe investing in public schools. I'm open to magnet schools. I'm open to lab schools as well. But I'm all about making sure that we fund public schools. And so if we can create those choices within the public school system, heck yeah, I'm open to it. But
so public school choice, but not including private and parochial schools.
I'm not for using public dollars for private school choices.
And that's K through 12. In higher education, long policy in the Commonwealth has been to publicly support private colleges through the TAG program. A lot of schools benefit from that. Is there a difference in the policy?
Well, I think do
we differentiate between a kid who goes to a high school in Richmond and a college in Virginia? They get money from the state to go to, pick one, Holland, Sweetbriar, Liberty, Randolph-Macon.
Randolph-Macon, right?
You were going to go.
And here's the thing. When I was considering Randolph-Macon back in 1999, 2000, when they gave me they don't do like scholarships like they do at the Division I level, right? They give you your package. Yeah, right, for the package. And I remember looking at the package, and TAG was on the package, and I was like, oh,
what's
okay.
TAG?
I don't know what TAG is. It's not until TAG is some money that I'm going to be getting whatever. I get that, but the sort of amount of dollars that are, and you know this, the amount that we invest in TAG versus we invest in actual funding of higher ed, vastly different.
What saves money?
vastly different.
Because it saves money. It saves money to send kids to private colleges versus funding the full rate at a public college.
Well, I'm a believer, Chris, that I think that for our kids not to end up in debt, that we should do what we did when I was in college some 20 years ago, roughly, that we should be funding higher ed a lot more than what we're doing it today.
Don't disagree there.
I mean, I remember back in the day that there were kids who lived in New Jersey and kids who lived in Pennsylvania who came south to Virginia using our great Virginia schools because it was more expensive to go to school in New Jersy and in New York. And they were ending up down here in our system.
There's no question.
Now, we've caught up with them and they get more per, in grants and aid to go to their schools than we get for our kids. That's a problem, right? And my fear nowadays is that the door of higher ed, that opportunity is being closed for kids like me. Kids growing up on free and reduced lunch with, a single parent in the home. Is that opportunity still available for a child like me who's living in Stanton, who's living in Roanoke?
I know those kids.
And my fear,
I raised those kids in my house.
I did. My fear that
not my kids, other
but
kids.
I fear that door is closing.
Very much so.
And so, what does it take? It does take investment. Someone will tell you it's not all about money, Mr. Mayor. True, it's not all about money, but it does take investment. And I think.
But you said kitchen sink, all of the above. Why do we preclude that from the conversation? Because it's a strong part of the narrative coming out of the pandemic that kids who went to private schools and parochial schools did okay, if not better than the public schools.
Because
charters are public schools. The Obama administration.
We have a charter in Richmond.
We could do more if there was more political heft behind that. And throughout the state, we have less than 10. We have one in Richmond. And very successful schools servicing poor students, Cristo Ray and Julia Cooper. Those are serving a lot of kids.
Those are private schools, not
private
charter.
schools,
Yeah.
Funded through the educational tax credit program. Shouldn't we be doing more of that? All the above, kitchen sink approach, whatever works for the child, whatever gets that packet that gives them that hope that's going to get them to the next level. Why do we say we can't do that for private schools? And yet we do it for colleges. To the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars.
I would say this, though. Why can't we do that for our public schools, though, as well?
We do.
Well, we're not doing it very well.
Mr. Mayor, you're the mayor.
Well, yeah.
You've been here for 6 years.
And under my time, we've seen a 33% increase in funding the Richmond public schools.
So the funding's okay.
The funding is okay, right?
Okay, you just said it wasn't.
Well, we had a pandemic also.
Well, I don't disagree.
Well, the funding is okay from the city. The funding's not okay from the state.
Well, the state doesn't have entire responsibility.
Well, if you think that localities all across the Commonwealth have to pick up the tab for public education, so you're making places like Petersburg pick up the tab, where they're already dealing with a smaller tax base, because you all know that we pay for our schools through real estate taxes. So you're telling Petersburg or Emporia that you have to dig deep and raise your real estate taxes to pay for your schools? I just think that's unfair.
Well, can't we save money by having kids not go to public schools?
So you're saying we should do away with public schools?
God, no. My kids graduated from public schools. Why would I do that? That's not.
But I think that's the slippery slope, though.
That's not a rational argument.
I think that's the slippery
90% plus
slope.
of kids go to public schools.
I think that's the slippery slope.
Slippery slope is going to a private school?
No, the slippery slope is like not funding public schools, or reason not to fund public schools.
When have we not funded public schools? When have we cut public school funding?
Well, what I know is
the reality is we're running into a Medicaid versus education reality.
What I know is this: the standards of quality have not been funded by Virginia.
Does that equate to family choices and going to schools they want to go to?
Well, I guarantee you, if you funded the standards of quality where they should be,
that would solve the problem.
That it would give better public choices to the kids who attend our schools today.
Why not private choices? Why do they have
to why buy this system and why build this system and starve it?
It doesn't fit every person, every family.
I recognize this, and that's for a family to make that choice. But why starve the public school system?
Who said anything about starving public schools? All I'm saying is let kids go to private schools.
I'm saying that the state has starved public schools. That's what I'm saying. I don't care whether it's
state's starving them.
Democrats or Republican. The state has starved public schools all throughout the Commonwealth.
That's the problem.
Southwest and urban areas as well.
And why do you think
rural
that,
areas and urban areas.
Why do you think that is? You were involved in the budget. I remember during the during the transition for the McAuliffe administration. We had our conversation before, and I'm like, here's some things that are realities with the General Assembly, And, obviously you have a lot of sway in the Democratic Party. You're a leader, seen as a leader. You're involved nationally in the mayor's associations. You have the conversations. You have the platform. You have the bullhorn.
And I think actions speak louder than words. And you look at the actions that my administration has made in Richmond over the course of the last 6 years, you've seen an administration that has put more dollars into Richmond public schools and public schools, period, than any mayor in a generation. And you also will see that we do the extra outside of school as well, because that's what's necessary. A child spends 80% of their time outside of school. That's why we invest in after-school programming and all the other essentials that are necessary that got me through public education.
Right.
That's what's necessary. And guess what? I don't believe the state is doing that. Is they're doing enough?
Why not? You've been around long enough to have an opinion on why the funding doesn't go to where you think it should go to. You were involved in the administration. You've been a mayor for 6 years. You've got to have some sense of the Virginia budget realities. I think, I'm going to lead with this one.
Okay.
The growth in Medicaid
It's eating up.
We're on a collision course between K through 12 and Medicaid. And that's just the reality. The annual growth of Medicaid, everyone talks about expansion of Medicaid expands every year, significantly. And those dollars get taken away from K through 12 and higher education. Fair?
Fair.
The last 20 years, you've said it, when you went to college, where it is today,
it's a
the prices, but look at the Medicaid budget then versus where it is today. How do we solve those deltas and get the funding to where it goes, but also recognizing, I think, that kids who just need a different environment should be able to go to a different environment.
Well, it sounds like we're having a revenue discussion here.
Or an expenditure problem.
Well, I think one's healthcare.
No one's in Richmond right now.
One's healthcare and one's education are essential. Those are
have tos.
Yeah, have tos. Right? You got to pay. You got to pay for that. And so the question is, I think we have a revenue problem. Do I believe that we should reform the current system, the tax system in Virginia? Yeah, long overdue.
Okay, what it should be?
Long overdue.
Whether it's what should the tax structure of Virginia be to keep us competitive with our peer states that we are trying to grow businesses here and attract businesses to the Commonwealth? What should it be?
Here's the thing.
Because the trend is moving away from income tax and go to consumption-based taxes.
Well, sales taxes essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, right. And right now we have the way that I only can speak to localities at the moment, right?
Right.
The fact that localities have but so many options available to them, and that is mainly real estate. Right? I'm experiencing right now.
It's a small toolbox.
I love my city. I love that more people are moving to Richmond. It's an attractive place. We become a magnet, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic as well. And you've seen home prices and home values go up, and people are getting squeezed out. But the largest pool of revenues that I have as a mayor is real estate taxes.
Yep.
I have no other options.
Right.
I think the state has to trust the localities and put more options on the table.
Okay.
So we can fund, we're talking about, schools right now, public education, so we can have more options on how we go about funding public education. Right now, it's real estate taxes.
Right.
Give us more tools, and maybe we can do something about that.
What tools do you want?
Well, I think there are some sales taxes that, they gave us the plastic.
You have meals taxes.
We have meals taxes.
Sales taxes. And you control those.
We don't have income taxes.
Do you want income tax for City of Richmond?
You know what? I look at my friends who are mayors in, let's say, Ohio and places like that, and they have income taxes as available to them.
So you want local income taxes throughout Virginia?
Here's the thing. I want the option.
Okay. So you opt in.
Because
you have to go to permission. Get permission to the General Assembly.
That's exactly right. Here's the thing.
Let us choose.
The Dillon's rule has made a lot of localities suffer. Right? Just give those localities, cities like mine, these a larger toolbox.
Okay.
Right now, they don't give us that toolbox. And so when people yell at me about, Mayor, why are you giving a rebate to this landowner, this property owner?
Sure.
I'm like, well, that's the only tool that I have.
Okay.
And so if I can't target the relief, right? I can't target a relief to Miss Jackson who's living down the street on 35th Street. I got to actually give it across the board, whether it's commercial or residential. Give us more tools.
We're going to have to end it here because I see the signs going up over here. I'd love to continue the conversation.
I would love to as well.
I always enjoy talking with you.
Yes.
It's always an exciting and fun conversation.
We didn't get a chance to talk about the midterms. okay.
Well, you come back. We'll talk about.
We'll talk about the midterms. Yeah.
It didn't go too well. I can't do.
Well, there's another red wave coming as we.
The red wave is coming. Anyway, this is Chris Saxman on the VIP podcast with our brand new VIP, Mayor Levar Stoney of the City of Richmond. Please like, subscribe, and share on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Thanks again to VCTA, the Broadband Association of Virginia, and Virginia Free for sponsoring this program. Thanks for joining us.